You are watching the Building SaaS with Python and Django stream, and my name is Matt Lehman. I'm the streamer on this channel, and I build software as a service using the Python programming language and the Django web framework. We use this stream to learn about how to build real web applications, things that actually live online and that have real consequences and real lessons to learn and are complex enough that are not just toy examples. So that's the core of what happens here. I myself am a programmer with over a decade of experience. I've been doing a lot of Python during that time, a lot of Django during that time, so I know the language well, I know the framework well, and I think that I can offer you something in that regard. The software that we look at is this software right here. It's called College Conductor. It's a tool that I've actually built for my wife, who's an independent educational consultant, but it's targeted at people like her who are in the realm of college admissions and need to help students manage everything that they do. The particulars of this domain are not that important for the stream itself. I walk you through everything that we do and kind of explain stuff along the way, anything that you need to know. So just know that this is the website that we're working on. Of course, I encourage you to chat in the stream. I've got the chat over here so we can have a discussion, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have, and we'll go from there. If you find that the stream is useful and enjoy the content that's on here, I just ask that you share it if you can. Send a link to the Twitch stream or mention me on Twitter or something like that, and because I really want to get more conversation going and just have a good time and help people with their web application development. So with all that kind of preamble out of the way, let's talk about what we're looking at tonight. We're continuing on from a stream that was a couple weeks ago, and I'm going to drop a link here. This is what we're working on. Okay, so people can come in later and know what's going on. And the goal is to get a third-party service integrated into College Conductor. College Conductor is all about admissions and having data about colleges. And one of the services that we're looking at is this third-party service called Prompt, which is it's a service all about college essays. So part of the admissions process that if you've ever gone to college or university here in the United States is about submitting essays with many of the school applications. And this website just helps with that process. The details of what Prompt does is sort of outside of what I really care about, because what they do is offer kind of a secondary service that because their real product is helping you with the actual guts of your essay, but they want you to know what essays are out there. So they put together this massive listing of all sorts of schools and what the essays are for those schools' applications. And what I want to be able to do with College Conductor is take the list that's here and display it on the College Conductor site for a particular school profile page. If we look over here, we can go to College Conductor and we can look at, for example, the University of Virginia. This is where I went to school. We're going to build out this profile more about the school to have additional data and external links. So this is where this information will ultimately live on the site, so that an admissions counselor will be able to look up a school and then find out essays very quickly by jumping over to Prompt. And if we look over at Prompt, we can take a look at, say, Baylor University. Looks like that Baylor only has one, but you can get examples of other schools where they have more questions that they ask. So that's the core of what we're doing. Prior to doing that, though, I want to take a little detour. So this week I encountered something, a new Python package I had never seen before, and I encountered it when I was looking at Warehouse. So Warehouse, if you're new to Python, is the software that actually makes the Python package index work. Package index is where all packages live. So as you're installing packages with the pip tool, and you're doing pip install, whatever, you're actually interfacing with this warehouse site. And that's what lives at pypi.org. Like this page that just loaded is loading because of warehouse. So warehouse is a big, complicated system. They're probably another good place that if you want to study an open source project that has a lot of code, this is even more complex than what we're looking at with College Conductor. So and serves a lot of traffic. So you could probably learn a ton of stuff. And I periodically try and do some things like that. But looking at warehouse, what did I discover? Nope, not in here. It was in, I believe it was their make file. No, it was not. Where did it go? I saw this just the other day. It was something pretty cool. Let's see if we can do a search for it. It was a project called Hupper. And, there it is, the Docker Compose file. So Hupper's pretty cool little tool. What it does, its job is to be a reloader tool. So let's say you're new to Django and you are going through the Django tutorial and they tell you to run manage.py run server. And part of using run server is that anytime you make changes, it will automatically reload your code. That's super useful. Other frameworks like Pyramid have similar tools that will have a reload option. And what Hupper does is gives you that kind of reload capability in any program. So, or excuse me, any Python program, I should say. So Hupper says, if you give me a module to run, I will look at any Python code that is on the sys path and code that gets loaded as part of this module executing, and watch for changes. And if there's any kind of change at all, we will reload that for you. And so this solves a real problem for me because in my local development of Conductor, I use a tool called Honcho. Honcho is a great tool. It uses the proc file format to list out the different processes that you want to run. And as you can see here, I have three. I have gunicorn, I have a celery worker, which does background work, and then I have a makefile target, which does a bunch of like Webpack stuff underneath the covers. But I didn't want to throw that all into one line in the proc file. But here's the problem. This celery worker line was having a problem with reloading. It just, if I make a change to a celery worker task, it doesn't even attempt to reload it. So what I was having to do when I'm doing my development is start up Honcho, this tool that starts all these processes. And if I would make a change and I wanted to go and test a task change, I'd have to kill the Honcho process, which would stop all of the other processes, and then start it back up so it would reload everything, which is a complete waste of time, right? So what Hupper promises to do is give me a way to pass the celery worker module as an argument to Hupper, so that when I make a change, I should be able to see celery automatically reload. So that's what I had found in Warehouse, and I was eager to try it out. And I didn't know the best time to do it, but hey, sometimes being on streams and working on projects is about not necessarily just about the thing that you're trying to get done that day, but also the kind of fun stuff that goes along with the environment setup. So I'm going to blatantly steal from the Warehouse project and follow their pattern of what they're doing here. So looks like they're saying the module to run is celery, and by passing in, now this is the application that's going to run, and this is the subcommand, and then they pass in some other parameters. So this should map pretty closely. So I have app here, is Conductor, so we might have to play with this to get it to work right, but this is, I think, worthwhile to do because it will ultimately save me time as I start writing more tasks that use celery. So let's get Hupper installed. I use requirements flow for installing packages, and you can see I have two files that are where my packages are. One is requirements.txt and the other is requirements.dev.txt. These are an important distinction because in my production environment I don't want to install my development dependencies, so I separate them that way. And this is a developer dependency. So let's go in there and put it in. I like to alphabetically sort these things. So let's put Hupper right there where it belongs. And let's do this. Pip install requirements dev. Okay. Looks like I got a new version of requests along the way, but that's okay. So now we have Hupper installed. And I confess I don't really know a lot about Hupper. I did look at their documentation and saw that it came from Pyramid, but it's new for me, so I could very well get parameters wrong along the way, but we'll bang on it until it works. So coming back to what was over here, looks like you pass in Hupper, and I know that this is the module, the dash M is like the module to load, so it's saying load the Celery module. And that must be enough to tell Celery, like, hey, I'm going to accept some commands here. So let's do this. Let's say Hupper and the module is Celery. And I'm going to try and leave, I don't think that the order really matters for Celery. I could be wrong on that, but I'm going to try and leave it as is and see if that's enough to get it working. So let's run Honcho with Honcho start and see if it starts up. So I see that the web started up. I see front end starting up here. Where, oh where is worker? That's curious. So maybe Hupper is consuming standard output. That's a possibility. Let's go look at Hupper's documentation to see if we can get that back, because when I'm running on Honcho, I'd like to be able to see the output if I can. Okay, so here's the description basically saying exactly what I told you. It's effectively running the module thing, and I don't see anything immediately here, but this is just the README. So let's see if we can find some more documentation on this. This came from the Pyramid crowd, so it's over at Pylon's project. And the internet is taking a little while to go here. Okay, so it's telling us that it uses one of these three tools to watch for changes. That's okay. So we might actually need to install, because I don't think I'm using, I know I'm not using Watchman. Watchman is a, well, I'm pretty sure I don't have Watchman installed. Let's check. Hey, how about that? So some other project I installed Watchman, so I guess it's using that to actually watch for file changes. And command line usage is here. And really not a lot of documentation here. What can we find? And it could be that we have to pass something to Celery itself to get the actual reloading to go. Let's see if Hupper has any help along the way. Or you know what might have happened? Like I said, I don't really know exactly what I'm doing with this, but we're going to try. Just want to make sure that running, I'm using Z Shell, and sometimes it has issues with virtual environments and not playing nicely with, when once you install things, that the executables don't become immediately available to the shell, but I guess Honcho takes care of that by starting a new process, so not an issue here. But I'm still not seeing anything, so let's stop Honcho for a second and see if Hopper has any help. Has the W to watch. There's a verbose flag. Okay, let's try running Hopper without Honcho, see if that will work. So in my proc file, I had all of this stuff. Let's find out what happens if we copy paste this onto the terminal to see what will run. Okay, that's pretty convincing that Hopper seems to be taking the input. So it ran, it's running in a sub process, and yeah. Okay. So let's try adding Hopper-v to get verbose. Maybe that'll help. And if we can't get this in a couple minutes, we'll give up and work this offline. Thought it would be cool to see. This is an unanticipated challenge here. Okay, that doesn't seem to want to do anything. So what else could we try? Well, let's look at Warehouse had in theirs, they had a couple of flags. So I don't actually know what -b is. So let's see what the celery worker, what that help says. Maybe it's a flag that we need too. Ah, so it's unrelated. It's talking about running celery beat, which could be useful, but not something I'm looking to do right now. And the other thing that looked a little strange is this is just running Warehouse as the application, but that could be a side effect of the way that they've configured Celery to run. It could just be that their app name happens to be Warehouse and doesn't need any of the other stuff. So we can still attempt it. Like, what happens if I take off this? Will it just fail? No sign of life. How about if I run Celery worker like that? So it still managed to find the tasks within there. This is what I want to see when I'm ultimately running this. And I'm a little disappointed that this is harder to get the output than I would like to see. It could be that Hopper is doing some buffering of the output. There could be a lot of things going on. Okay, well, that was a fun little diversion, but I'm going to stash that for now, and we'll come back to it some other time. Or maybe I'll work it offline. So let's save that as Hopper. Okay. Anyway, seems like a cool tool. Maybe it's just missing one little thing to make it work perfectly for what we need. The next thing to do is get back on the actual task. So let's look at the issue. So I dropped a link to the issue. It's issue 354. This is where I keep all the code on GitHub. Check it out if you want. It's got lots of stuff on there. Django code, some JavaScript code, some Ansible playbooks. There's a lot that you can pick up from if you look in there. But this is the task that we're working on. It's detailing out what it is I really care about. And this is what we got done last time, was to make a model to put information about these schools in. And now the job is to actually display the schools on, or display the prompt link, I should say, on the school page. So let's do that. Where do we want to begin? This is in the, I think, vendor models. Yep, that's where I put this. And we've got a foreign key to school, and the template that we want to modify is in the planner. This template over here. And so here's the view for someone who is authenticated. So, well, actually, I guess it's combined, really. So it's got a couple of things in here. So what I wanted to do with this view is limit the information that's output based on whether you're logged in or logged out. If you're logged out, then the school page really becomes like a teaser page for the product, because it assumes that a logged out user is someone who does not currently have an account with College Conductor. So it includes some basic information that would be kind of universally useful, that there's no really real strong reason to deprive people of access to that. Then for folks who are logged in, it would display more information. I don't have a lot of information yet, which is why this block is empty. So I kind of left it as, here's something that should be done, but it's not done yet. So I think that this prompt piece is a piece that is a useful piece of information to keep behind the paywall, because otherwise what am I doing providing free service to everybody? So I think what's going to happen is that the link itself will go right here. And I'm going to just kind of mock up what I think it should be, and we can see how it looks. And if it's okay, then we'll fill it in with real data. And if it's not okay, then we'll tweak it. So I'm going to say dummy school. And I'm just doing the simplest thing that I think will look reasonable, which is to say, here's a link in a paragraph, so that things will just be listed. It may look not good enough. I actually don't think it will be, because right now it'll just say a school name, which will be kind of confusing, but we'll see along the way. All right, so here's what I wanted to see with the Hupper stuff earlier, is I wanted to see that section come out as like worker, but just wasn't going that way. Oh well. Hi, Odinson, welcome. If you got any questions, feel free to ask away. So let's look at localhost, where we have this, and I think I changed the port to stop conflicting with stuff. That is actually my wife's degree in the background, so it is an undergrad degree, but it's for my wife, if that's what you're asking. So we're on port 8080. That's where I kept it. Oops, and this is HTTPS. Okay, so here we are. We want to look at a particular school, and let's bring up the University of Virginia that I used as the example earlier. SaaS is software as a service. So when you go online, and it's a kind of a generic term that gets used for any online web business. So well, just about any business that you could pay for that are not selling products that would deliver to your house. So I would not consider Amazon per se to be a SaaS, although some might. But if you're going there for the explicit purpose of paying for that website and access to that website. PayPal is like a payment processor. So I think SaaS companies would use PayPal to like let people pay for their stuff. So maybe like an online learning site. Yeah, maybe Audible, if you wanted to use just their web interface, but a service that you go straight to that one website and just use that website. So like a training website, I'm really drawing a blank, I'm sorry, where you can pay for access that lets you in, gets you a login. I actually don't know brilliant.org, but it sounds like you kind of get the gist of it. So I think you're probably on point if I looked it up. Actually, curious, what is brilliant.org? I can spell. Oh, no problem. Yeah, sign up for free. Yep. No, you're good. That's why I'm here, answering questions. Okay, so College Conductor is one of these things. Like the idea is you are an admissions counselor and you pay for the service to help your students. So it's really meant to be a tool for professionals. So there are lots of niche businesses that cater to certain industries and professions, and that's exactly what I'm trying to do, is cater to college admissions counselors. So here is the actual page. Like, it's pretty basic at this point, and I'm not super satisfied with the actual layout, but I don't have really enough data to kind of beef it up with something that looks like this. Yes, I am. It's a solo project. That's correct. So let's put some prompt actual text here and fill it in with some more information and see how it looks. So let's call it view prompt essays. And that's actually probably more fitting than what was displaying there, because the school name's already up here. Yes, I am mixing up HTML with the web. So this is Python powers the site using a framework called Django, and so it does all of the business logic and pulling from the database. But to actually display that information, you use something called a template. So if you actually take a close look at this, you'll see some weird stuff like this line right here. That's not actually HTML code. That's in this template language. So it's a way to add information that you inject with some data from your database, which is what we're about to hook up. So we have this link here. I could probably maybe put a little icon here to show that it will link out, but I think it's okay for now to say, check out the prompt essays. So now we need to power this with real data. So how can we do that? I think the first thing to do is go to our actual view that makes this work, and that should be on planner views. What if I put the image above the name of the school? That's true. I was hoping, so yeah, I haven't put a lot of thought into this layout because it was pretty minimal, but it's certainly a conceivable thing to do. And I don't remember if I designed this to be mobile responsive or not. You can actually, okay, so it is. So it collapses into a one column view with the image above later. So that's definitely there as well. So let's look at the actual school detailed view. So this is the thing that actually displays the school information, and you can see it switches between two different templates based on whether it's a user is logged in or not. No, so this is a counselor. Okay, I'll back up a little bit. So a college counselor will work with a student to figure out what schools the student wants to apply to. And in order to even come up with that list, I want to have College Conductor to have enough information in the database that that can help a counselor figure out what is the right fit for that student, or at least be able to point them to resources. So if the student wants to go to a school that has 5,000 undergrads or something like that, roughly, then a counselor would be able to search for a particular school, bring up the school page, and go look at the U.S. federal data that actually has all the statistics and link out to that. For example, that's what this College Navigator is. This is out to the government site that has tons of data about this. So it's really trying to get counselors all of the information they need in order to expand upon their own personal knowledge, because counselors already know a lot about schools, or at least good ones do, and give them extra stuff, because no counselor is going to remember, for example, every in order to counsel well, that's a good point. Remember every essay prompt that will be on an application. That kind of information changes a lot. So if I can provide them with links to say, like, here's how you go get that quickly, to know if it's still relevant, to know what kind of questions your student needs to answer, that's the goal here. That's what prompt does. I know you came in a little later, but that's what this service that we're integrating with does over here. Okay, so let's come back over to the code and check out what's going on here. So we can see that what gets put into the context here is the school and a product plan, which is something that's for the upsell of information, and is data that the template needs to actually show. So we need to, if we can, put in basically the prompt school is what piece of information that we're looking for. So I'm going to write some test code that will figure this out in a second, but in the end, I want it to look like prompt school. Oops, it should be a string key. Okay. Which I haven't defined yet. So when we did our code earlier, we looked at the vendor models. That's where I put this new connection, and you can see that it's got a foreign key to school, which means that all of any sort of connection between the school and the data that holds information about prompt is connected to the database through this foreign key. I think I reflected a bit more on this, and I think what makes more sense is to change this from a foreign key to a one-to-one field. What that means is, right now, the way this relationship is defined is that multiple prompt school records could point to the same school. So it's called a one-to-many relationship if you ever study databases. And that's not really what we're interested in. We're really interested in the case where there's one university, a US university or college, and there is the matching prompt school that associates with it. It's a one-to-one. There's never going to be multiple prompt schools that will map to a single US school. So I think I picked the wrong thing here. And that'll become important because when we want to actually access the prompt school later on, I want to be able to do it in a way that just looks like this, where I'm saying prompt school.school. And right now, it's actually something much gnarlier than that, where I'd have to say prompt school.prompt set.first or something like that. And that's really not cool. I just don't like it. So I just want to make sure I get the name right. So we're looking for the Django one-to-one field, I believe. And it's very much like a foreign key relationship in a database, but it does some extra stuff in Django so that you can access it a lot quicker, or access it in a way that's a lot more natural. So here's an example. And we have, so we're going to say, I think what we're going to do is change it to one-to-one to field. All the rest of the stuff should be the same. And I don't think I even want to change the related name. I just want to use the default one, which should be prompt school, if I remember that correctly. So one-to-one field. None of that other stuff should change. And this will probably cause I need to do a migration, because we're changing. So what we're doing is we're changing the model. And whenever you make model changes in Django, it tries to keep the database in sync And for some of these things, it will actually change some SQL in your database to make sure your database tables are up to date. For this one, it might just generate more of like an informational change record. And these changes are called migrations. So let's try to run make migrations and see what happens. Yeah, so it's generating a new one called 002, and just to check and make sure that it is not in fact changing any SQL, because I don't think it is. We'll look at the migration. Nope. Oh, it is doing something. Okay, well, it doesn't really matter. That should still be fine. So I now have the one-to-one field, and I think that's what I want. So I'm going to apply that to I have a local database. So I'm going to run this migrate command, and what it did, so the way Django migrations work is the Django reads your database models, which are these things right here, and the database model defines all of the data that's going to go into your database table. And once it reads that information, it generates for your particular database. I happen to be using the PostgreSQL database, whereas another example might be MySQL or SQL Server or something like that. And it can generate the right code to make the right updates to your database. So when I made a change over here, it knew that I changed it from a foreign key to one-to-one field, and it knew that it had some kind of mapping to that, and it was going to change some constraints on the database. And it's probably changing the constraint to say that like there can be only one of these, and you better make sure that there's only one, or else you throw an error. That's probably what's actually going on if you read through this SQL, which I'm not going to take the time to do. So it generated that code and stuck it in a file, and I just applied that code change. So now that my local database should map what is with my models. That's kind of what's going on here. And then I'm just going to, without even writing the test, I'm going to see if this is correct or not. So I think it's going to be just school prompt school, but I'm sort of guessing at the moment. I'm pretty sure that's what it is, but I don't recall for certain. And that's just evidence that even after using a framework like Django for 5 years, you can still not remember everything, and that's okay. So let's come back over here, and we're gonna refresh. School object has no attribute prompt school. Okay, so I definitely did something wrong. Yeah, that is why we have Google, exactly. That's why we have Stack Overflow and all sorts of cool tools. All right, so how am I going to figure out what it does have? Let's look at it from the shell. Or maybe I should just read the documentation a little bit more. Like, what's the default name? Okay. Has a one-to-one field called place in a restaurant. So the restaurant has this. It says it should be able to access place. That's weird. All right, we'll poke at it. So let's get the school model. Oh, maybe I defined it in the wrong way. Okay, I see what I think I might have done now. So I want to be able to reference. I need the linkage both ways probably. So maybe related name is actually required. Well, I'm gonna just poke at it for a minute and see what I'm doing wrong. I'm getting the name of the app wrong. Planner. Okay. It's conductor.planner.models. And let's take a school. And I just want the first one. I don't really care which one we get. And let's look at all the attributes that are on it. Okay. So it named it as prompt school with no underscore. That's why I got it wrong. I'm not crazy about that. I would rather have it be the expanded name. So let's change that. So I think we can say related name equal, related name equal prompt school. And that should hopefully use the expanded thing. So now I'm afraid that will generate another migration. So here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna take that the migration that I just generated, and I'm gonna roll it back. Are you using Prettier? I'm using the Python equivalent to Prettier, which is something called Black. The joke being like Henry Ford's comment, you can have any model car color that you want as long as it's black. And so yes, it's an auto formatter that takes my code and lets me write whatever garbage I want to throw at it, and then it just automatically formats it for me. So it's pretty convenient. Okay, so I've removed that migration, which is fine. And for what I want to do now is I want to actually remove it altogether, because I'm going to regenerate the exact same thing. I haven't committed any of this code yet, so it's no harm, no foul kind of thing. So let's do the same thing and do make migrations again. And now we should have the new file, which should have the related name, hopefully correct this time. So let's try to migrate it again, which will reapply the changes. And let's start up the web server and get everything going and see if I got it right this time. All right, so we have our attribute error. Perfect. Didn't blow up. And we can check it out too. So we can come over here and we can look at the request. So this is, context, right? So this is the Django debug toolbar. It's a third-party package that you can install, which when you're running your web application with Django, gives you access to all the information, like the actual data that you care about during development. So super useful, and it gives you just deep insight to everything that's running. So part of that is looking at the templates, the actual HTML file that is mixed with the data. And when you look at the debug toolbar and go into the templates section, you can do this thing called toggle context. That's what I did. And it shows you everything that is available to the template at the time you're running it. And so we can see that we have the product plan, and okay, this is a scenario where I happen to make one of these prompt schools for UVA in advance. So let's pick a different school. Let's pick my other alma mater. I went to two schools. I went to UVA for my undergrad. Okay. School has no prompt school. So that's the thing that we want to, that's the case that we have to consider. I thought that would just return none, but I am wrong. So we can use hasAdder to avoid the exception checking. Okay, that's actually probably what we want to do, because let me talk a bit more about prompt school. This prompt school model is going to represent schools that actually have prompt essays. So College Conductor has a database of 2,000 plus schools. There are not that many schools on this page. There are a lot, but the list is far fewer than 2,000. Okay, so that means that of the average school on College Conductor, most of them will not have a prompt school. Many will, most won't. So what we can do is we can actually, I guess, do a check and say if the school, or okay, what was it, has adder, and school and prompt school was the other side of this, then we want prompt school to be school.prompt school. Else we want, we'll just say prompt school is going to be none. Okay. So that should avoid, and then we'll come down here and then use the local variable. That should avoid the exception that we just saw. Let's see if we did. Any beginner Python program ideas? Oh man, depends on what you're interested in. The problem with Python, and I say this as someone, so I live in Maryland, and I actually run the local Python user group for my city. I live in the city of Fredrik. So I get this question a lot. I get it at the user group from people who are trying to learn Python. And my answer always varies. It really depends on what you're interested in. So if you look at Python as an ecosystem, there are kind of two directions that people go down. One is kind of a data science camp. So if you're really interested in using Python for science and data science, there's a lot of path that I could send you down that way. If you're more interested in using Python for web development, that's a different path. If you're just sort of generally interested in Python, that's a whole other category. Let's take a little detour. And this is the Python Fredrik site. This is the place where I send people to. So good first projects. And this kind of depends on where you want to be on send in. I think if you're like totally brand spanking new to programming, I try to send people to here. This is an editor. Like some people don't even know what a text editor is. Okay, cool. So you're going towards data science, so that's pretty good. So we can tailor this information a little bit towards you. So there's lots of good information, lots of good ways to get into it. If you're getting into data science, the strongest path I can send you down is to look into Anaconda. Anaconda is Python. So Anaconda is a bundling of Python tools and stuff that's tailored towards data science. So there are there's a common set of data science tools that virtually every data scientist seems to use whenever I speak to data scientists that show up at the user group or I interact with online or PyCon. And Anaconda's like sole mission is to take those packages and put them together. I mean, you can kind of see it from their splash page here. And it's stuff we're working with tons of, huge amounts of data, and doing lots of analysis, like at a statistical level, lots of visualization, all kinds of stuff. So Anaconda is a good way to like get everything installed that you need and not have to worry about pulling in all the weird stuff, because what happens in data science is these tools are made by scientists that work in a variety of different languages and need all different kind of compilers and have been working on stuff for their PhD thesis for decades, and just has a long legacy to it. So getting all of the tools built by yourself is kind of maybe a daunting task. So Anaconda makes it sort of easy to get that going. So that's where I send you off. And if you want to check out pythonfredrik.org, I doubt you're in Fredrik, but it doesn't matter. We have some good presentation materials that we did from our local data scientist, and she put together a really cool topic on it that goes through, breaks down all of the common tools that are there. So that's where I would send you to as a data scientist thing. So that's my advice. So let's take a little bit more look at some Django for now, though, because I told you there's a kind of a divide in the world between yeah, Christine Lee. That's what I'm talking about. There's the divide between Python and I am squarely in the web side of that world, as you might be able to tell from me doing Django stuff. So we have a prompt school, and we are either displaying it or not, and checking for this attribute. And the reason I'm going this route, so there is a way to say, there's a lot of people that say, hey, you're using Python, you should let it fail, do the exceptional stuff. But the challenge to that is that when exceptions happen, they should really be exceptional. And the reason is that exceptions have a pretty high cost in Python, because they kind of shift the mode of the interpreter to a different sort of stack to handle unwinding the stack. And so you don't really want to take a performance penalty. And since it's a totally reasonable scenario that the average school on college Conductor could not have a prompt school related to it, I don't want to have the average case go down into this degenerate case where it's going to use an exception to actually display the right thing. So that's why I'm using hasAdder to actually check in advance for prompt school versus just trying to assign it and letting it fail if it doesn't find the thing. Okay, so I kind of did this not in a test-friendly order, though. Now we get here, we're going to clean that up because I actually, there's no link here. This makes no sense right now. But let's go back and make sure that we get the data right. So we're going to come down and we're going to go to the planner and the test views. I like to do unit tests. I normally do a test-driven development style where I write the test before I even write the code, but I was just sort of exploring this with the one-to-one field, so I didn't do that this time. So we have this thing where we have context, and I want to make a prompt school, and the prompt school is going to use this prompt school factory, and I want it to be associated with this school. And then I want to be able to say down here that prompt school is equal to prompt school. All right. Cool. My test ran, passed successfully. So why am I doing this? I'm doing this because I want to have the it's kind of a data contract, because there's not a real clear connection between the template side of the code and the Python side. I could run a more complicated test that runs all of the code at once, that will actually, query the database and render a template and put data in there and kind of bundle it all together. But that I trade off the speed of doing that. To do all that, I have to actually call all those functions, and there are two downsides. That's going to be slower, and it's going to be more brittle to change. I would have to search through the HTML output to find matches, and just kind of gets messy. So what I like to do instead is do a test on the Python code, the view, that says, is the view kind of matching the contract that the template expects. So the template code is going to use this prompt school thing, and may or may not have it. But by putting it here, I've kind of confirmed that, if a school has a prompt school, that's what this line is doing. It's making a prompt school record and attaching it to the school by this little stuff that's in the parentheses here. Then I can verify that the view code is actually putting that into the context, which goes into the template. And to prove that out, let's comment this out, because it is nice to see a test fail to prove that what you did is the right thing. So if I run the same test, now it says I can't find that. It's not in there. So I think that tells me that we did it right. Okay. All right. So we have our prompt school. We have our test. We have our model change to get the one-to-one field. Let's go back and clean up that template. The template that we had there was just that sort of that placeholder thing that looked kind of yucky. Got the job done, but it doesn't look great. So now we want to come in here, and we only want to display this thing if there even is a prompt school. So the first thing I'm going to do is wrap this in an if block. And this should handle our case with like the Johns Hopkins example that we just looked at. So come back over here. Now if I refresh, the view prompt essay should disappear, because right now in my local database, I don't have that connection. So this is exactly what we want. Over here though, we do want it to display, because the University of Virginia had a prompt school model record. And just to prove that, let's look over in the admin. The Django framework comes with a built-in admin, which is super handy to actually let you, without going down to your SQL shell and messing around with the command line, you can view your data and what's available. So here we can look at our prompt schools, and we can see that I've got one in here for University of Virginia. I've got it named and it's connected to the University of Virginia school record. So that's exactly what we want. So the last bit to really do here is change this. And how do I want to take care of this? I think I'm going to hard code it. I'm going to hard code one bit. So the site that I'm pulling from, let's take a look at this thing. This is the page that I want to link to. So what I want to have happen is someone is in College Conductor, and the flow is they come in, they're looking for a school, and they're looking for essay prompts, and they don't want to like navigate the prompt website. They're already in College Conductor, and it's useful for them there. So they would come over here. Sorry, where was I? Come over here, click this thing. I want it to open a new tab, and I want it to take them right to the school. Okay. In order to do that, we need to find, let's see if we can find Virginia in here. So prompt has UVA as this. And we can actually even, why don't we make it a kind of a real sort of test? So let's come in here and take our fake data and make it real data. So change this slug. Slug is to map to what prompt calls their label to jump to the right thing. And that's what I want to save. So now my local database has data that will point to the real prompt site. And so I want to take the URL that's here. I want to come over here and plug it in like that. And essentially all we're doing is taking this little UVA label, and now we're going to fill it in with the placeholder from prompt school.slug. So this is the template syntax that these double curly braces that are here to open it and here to end it. And it says, it's looking inside of the context, and context is just a dictionary of data. And yeah, so it will update for every school. Every school that has a prompt school record will then pull from the associated record. And the ultimate goal is I'm gonna, in fact, I don't know if I'm gonna do it in the stream tonight, but I'm gonna do it at some point, is to make the actual code that will go like scan that page and do a web scrape and pull out all of the fields. and import the data into the site. Exactly. I'll have to do the actual like wiring of, you know, my college conductor school record to this prompt school record. But I've even thought about ways that we can do a quick script to do that comparison and find as many matches as possible to make as much of the manual drudgery out of the way. Because that is sort of the downside of it, is like I need to add value, but I need to connect it to the data that I already have. Until those connections are there, it's not giving anybody any value. So I've got the URL here. The other thing I wanted to do that I said was I wanted to launch in a new tab. So that's just using standard HTML stuff of the target blank. So if you're learning HTML, you probably learned that pretty early about when you're doing links, is if you use target blank, it means it will open up, rather than following it through the page, it'll open it up in a new tab. I think it used to be a new window, because harkening way back in the day, but today it means new tab. All right, so let's try it out. So if we click this, boom, jumps right to UVA. That's exactly the experience that I wanted. So I think we've succeeded. All right. So I'm going to look at this, and I think I'm happy with that. That is awesome. Thanks. I'm kind of pumped that works too. So let's look at what we did tonight. I think this is a good, decent place to start to finish off for the evening, because it's kind of a victory. But we can like review. Have you done all of this tonight? Oh, I didn't do all this. So I run these. I'm trying to run these like every week, and the model that I did that I showed off a little bit ago was this model that I did was at the last session. So that's where I showed how I create the model and write all the tests for that. So the part that we did was actually modifying the model where I realized it was wrong. And yeah, let's just look at the diff to show off everything. So we updated the test and made sure that prompt school was in that. How long do I think it will take to complete the entire site? Ooh, that's a good question. A project like this is like, you know, what is done? Done is when I guess when your customers are happy. So, you know, the truth of this is this project is really targeted at just my wife right now. So I have like one user. I have one person I have to make happy. And, you know, she provides feedback as kind of like the product manager, who's saying, yeah, this feature would be super useful. So I know like the features that she really wants to have in there. And I also know the kind of the price point that I want to have of the product. And, you know, I got to kind of have a debate with her of, does this have enough features in it yet to make people think that this price point would be useful? And the answer right now is currently no, but that's the point of doing this. So I'm partly doing this. I do this stream for two reasons. I do it, one, to be able to like answer questions that like you have. I think I really appreciate your feedback tonight. To kind of teach people about Python and about Django. But the other part is just like to force myself to do this. I'm a parent. I've got 2 kids, and time is very limited. So it's a good motivator. All right, so we've got we finished off the test. Test was a 2-line change this time. Not a lot going on there. And this is the code change that we made to the actual view. We're checking for this prompt school, and if it has it, we're going to go ahead and pull it out. And I should highlight that it's at this line right here that Django will actually issue a database query and look for a prompt school. Is that even true? It might, well, I might be wrong about that. Maybe it's doing it at the has attr check, but it's in one of these 2 lines where the database check is happening. And then that prompt school, whether it's the, you know, actual record that came back or none, gets added to the context. In the template itself, where we check when the user is logged in and is a user we care about showing this data to, we check prompt school and we put a link in here. And the link goes straight to prompt, and it links to their data label that they have so that it will link to the right anchor in the page. The anchor is deduced by this hash mark or pound sign or octothorpe, whatever you want to call it. And then finally, we have the actual model change that we had to make. So I had to generate a migration because I wanted to change it from a regular foreign key to a one-to-one field. And for anyone else that's catching up on this later, the reason for that was a foreign key is a one-to-many relationship, like one to a bunch, and a one-to-one field is literally what it says, one-to-one, so that you only have one instance of something, which is fitting for what this particular data needs to do. So I think that that wraps us up for where we are for this evening. I'll commit all this stuff later, and so you don't need to watch me go through all those mechanics unless you're wanting to learn details about Git, which I'm happy to explore. But just what I like to do with these is post them on YouTube. I have a playlist out there, and I will put that out on Twitter. I'm MB Layman on Twitter if you want to follow me, and keep up to date for the next time I'm going to stream. I do try and stream on Wednesdays at 9 p.m. and I plan to stream next Wednesday. I guess that's the 26th, so the day after Christmas, if you're a Christmas celebrator. So appreciate feedback that received tonight. That was awesome. Thank you, Onsundan. Sorry if I'm totally butchering your pronunciation of your username. And just appreciate everybody who was able to participate and watch tonight. So I will on Sandon. Okay, cool. Thanks for coming. So with that, have a good night, everyone. Take care.